Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that might sting a little, but it's the truth. Somewhere along the way, you lost yourself. You got busy chasing dreams that weren't yours. You started living out someone else's definition of success. You let the world tell you who you were supposed to be, and in the process, you forgot who God created you to be. But I've got good news for you. Just because you've lost yourself doesn't mean you can't find yourself again. In fact, the only thing standing between where you are and where you're called to be is the work you're refusing to do on yourself. Sure, here are 6 keynotes from the speech. Asterisk, asterisk, you can't find yourself in the world until you first find yourself within. Asterisk, 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 potential means nothing without process and responsibility. Asterisk, 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 stop chasing strategies, start raising your standards. Asterisk, 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 your transformation begins with honesty and discipline. Asterisk, 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 every setback was preparation, not punishment. Asterisk, 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 the future you want is waiting on the present you to grow. Asterisk, asterisk, want, these turned into slides or quotes for social media. You can't find yourself in the world until you first find yourself within. That is not just a motivational phrase, it's a fundamental truth. Most people go looking for themselves in places where they were never meant to be. They think they'll find identity in a job title, in a relationship, in a paycheck, or in how many followers they have on social media. But all of those are external validations, and none of them can substitute for internal confirmation. The truth is, if you don't know who you are without the world clapping for you, you won't know who you are when the applause stops. The danger of seeking yourself in the world is that the world is inconsistent. It changes its standards. What's popular today is old news tomorrow. If your identity is rooted in the world, then yourself. Worth will rise and fall with trends, opinions, and approval. That's why people feel lost. They've attached their value to something that was never designed to anchor them. You can't anchor your soul to something temporary and expect to feel whole. Real identity starts on the inside. It starts with looking in the mirror and asking yourself the hard questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I believe when there's no reward attached to it? What values do I stand on when they cost me something? Finding yourself within means peeling back the layers of who you had to become to survive and getting back to who you were created to be. It's about returning to your core. Not what life has shaped you into, but who God placed in you from the beginning. This isn't about self-help. It's about soul recovery, because the truth is, many of us didn't lose ourselves in a day. We lost ourselves piece by piece. We compromised once to be accepted. We stayed silent to avoid conflict. We ignored our own intuition to fit into a system that never valued us to begin with. And over time, those small decisions became an identity we no longer recognize. Now we look around and say, I don't even know who I am anymore. But that confusion didn't come from the world. It came from disconnection within. So what does it look like to find yourself within? It starts with silence. You've got to get quiet enough to hear your own voice again. That voice that's been buried under doubt, fear, and conditioning. You've got to disconnect from the noise long enough to reconnect with your essence. That means turning off the distractions. That means getting off the treadmill of performance. That means stepping away from the pressure to prove and instead learning how to be. Once you silence the noise, you've got to get honest. Honest about the lies you've believed. Honest about the roles you've been playing. Honest about the parts of you that you've hidden or edited to make others comfortable. You cannot transform what you will not confront. If you want to find yourself again, you've got to be willing to look at the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Because the truth will set you free, but it will make you uncomfortable first. Then comes the rebuild. Now that you've stripped away the false identities, You've got to decide who you really are, not based on your past, not based on your pain, not based on other people's projections, but based on purpose. Who were you before life told you who to be? Who were you before fear entered the picture? Who were you before shame wrapped its hands around your voice? That's the version of you that's waiting to be rediscovered. That's the version of you that's still alive, buried but not dead. This process isn't overnight. It takes time, it takes intention, it takes commitment. You've got to be willing to go through a season of pruning, where things are stripped away not because you're being punished, but because you're being prepared. Prepared to live from a place of authenticity. Prepared to build a life that's aligned. Prepared to lead, to serve, to create, not from brokenness, but from identity. Too many people are living performative lives. They're successful on the outside, but empty on the inside. They've climbed ladders only to find they were leaning against the wrong wall. They've chased validation and applause, only to realize that applause doesn't fill the void, because the void isn't out there, it's within. And until that inner void is addressed, nothing external will be enough. You'll keep chasing, keep striving, keep proving, and still feel like something's missing. That's because you're trying to fix an internal problem with external solutions. And that never works. Asterisk, asterisk, Keynote, #2. Potential means nothing without process and responsibility. Asterisk, asterisk, expanded to approx. 700 words. No ending sentences or headings. Potential is a powerful word. It speaks to what asterisk could be asterisk, to what's possible, to what's inside of you waiting to be manifested. And for most people, hearing that they have potential feels good. It's encouraging, it's validating, but potential by itself is not enough. Having potential means absolutely nothing if you're not willing to go through the process that turns potential into power. Everyone loves to be told they have potential, but very few are willing to embrace the process required to make that potential real. Potential is like a seed. A seed has everything it needs to become a tree. But if that seed is never planted, never watered, never placed in the right environment, and never allowed to endure the process of time, it will never grow. And we have a world full of people walking around like unplanted seeds, gifted, talented, called, but dormant. Not because they aren't capable, but because they're avoiding the process, because process is uncomfortable. It requires pressure, it requires discipline, it requires time, and we live in a culture that values speed over stability and shortcuts over sacrifice. There is no greatness without a process. Every person you admire, every leader, every visionary, every builder, they all had to submit to the process. You cannot bypass it, you cannot delegate it, you cannot pray it away. You must go through it. And the process doesn't just grow your potential, it reveals your character. Because when the pressure comes, who you really are shows up. That's why responsibility matters. Because if you don't take ownership of your process, you'll always be looking for someone to blame when things get hard. Responsibility is the gatekeeper between potential and manifestation. You see, responsibility is not just about doing tasks. It's about owning your growth. It's about recognizing that nobody is coming to save you, that no one is more invested in your development than you should be. And until you take responsibility for your time, your thoughts, your habits, and your choices, your potential will stay locked up. You can be gifted and still not grow. You can be smart and still not succeed. Because it's not just about what you asterisk have asterisk, it's about what you asterisk do asterisk with what you have. Responsibility means doing the hard thing even when no one is watching. It means getting up early to build discipline. It means studying when others are scrolling. It means practicing when others are playing. It means taking feedback, learning from mistakes, and staying committed when motivation runs out. Because the people who truly develop their potential are not the most talented, they're the most responsible. They show up consistently. They do what needs to be done, whether they feel like it or not. And because of that, they produce fruit. Now here's the hard truth. Some people fall in love with their potential and never do anything with it. They become addicted to the idea of who they could be, but never take the steps to actually become that person. They talk about vision, but run from discipline. They speak in circles about what they're called to do, but they never build the structure that calling requires. Potential without process becomes potential wasted. And wasted potential turns into regret, because deep down, people know they were meant for more. They just didn't take responsibility for the more they were given. The process is where potential is tested. It's where you're refined. It's where your excuses are confronted. It's where your limits are stretched. And the truth is, the process doesn't care how much talent you have. The process will humble you. It will strip away your ego. It will show you the gaps in your foundation, but it will also prepare you. It will build your endurance. It will sharpen your vision. It will grow your capacity. That's why you can't be afraid of it. You've got to embrace it, because the version of you that can handle your potential only shows up through process. And in that process, responsibility is your anchor. It keeps you grounded when things get uncertain. It keeps you focused when distractions call your name. It reminds you that you're not just living for the next moment. You're building something bigger than the moment. You're becoming someone who can carry what you've been praying for. Because the blessing without the maturity to handle it can become a burden. Responsibility is what keeps that from happening. It's what turns opportunity into legacy. It's what separates dreamers from doers. And it's what gives potential the chance to become purpose-fulfilled. Keynote #3. Stop chasing strategies. Start raising your standards. Expanded to approx. 700 words, no ending sentences or headings in today's world. Everyone is looking for a strategy. They want the blueprint, the 10-step plan, the secret formula. People jump from course to course, coach to coach, trend to trend, hoping that the next thing will be the thing that finally unlocks their success. But what they don't realize is that strategies, by themselves, are powerless in the hands of someone with low standards. You don't rise to the level of your strategy. You fall to the level of your standards. You can have the best marketing strategy, the sharpest business plan, the most advanced tools, but if your personal standards are low, if your expectations for yourself are weak, then nothing will change. Strategies are only as strong as the person executing them, and most people don't have a strategy problem. They have a standards problem. They know what to do. They just don't hold themselves to a level where doing it becomes non-negotiable. The truth is, the real difference between high achievers and everyone else is not that they know something magical. It's that they demand more from themselves. They have set a standard for their life that refuses to tolerate mediocrity. They don't wake up every day wondering if they feel like showing up. They show up because that's who they are. They execute because that's the standard they've set. Success is not based on emotion. It's based on alignment with your standards. If you want to change your life, change what you tolerate, change what you allow, change what you accept from yourself. You don't need another tactic. You need to raise the bar, because the moment you raise your standards, you start attracting a new level of opportunities. You start commanding a different energy. You start making different decisions, not because the world changed, but because you changed. Standards shape everything. how you think, how you speak, how you move, how you lead. People get so caught up looking for better methods when they haven't even mastered the basics. They want high-level outcomes with low-level discipline. They want to build something extraordinary, but they're still operating from an ordinary mindset. That's backwards. You can't scale what's not first stabilized, and stabilization comes from standards. You stabilize your schedule, your habits, your mindset, your circle. When your standards are high, there's no room for confusion, chaos, or complacency. Raising your standards means you stop doing things based on how you feel and start doing them based on who you are. You don't go to the gym because you're motivated. You go because health is your standard. You don't invest in your growth when it's convenient. You invest because excellence is your standard. You don't show up for your business only when things are exciting. You show up because leadership is your standard. That's the difference between people who talk and people who build. People who build are led by standards, not feelings. And let's be clear, raising your standards isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent. It's about creating a framework that defines what is acceptable in your world and what is not. It's about knowing your values and aligning your actions with them daily. It's about refusing to settle. Not because settling is evil, but because you know what's possible when you refuse to compromise. Every time you compromise on your standards, you reinforce an identity of limitation. But every time you honor your standards, you reinforce an identity of growth. This is where transformation begins, not in what you know, but in what you demand. If your life feels stuck, check your standards. If your results feel inconsistent, check your standards. If your relationships feel draining, check your standards. Life will meet you at the level you demand of yourself. And if you're not demanding more, you're permitting less. Low standards open the door to frustration. High standards open the door to fulfillment. That's not just a mindset shift, it's a lifestyle shift. And this is why so many people chase strategies but never see breakthrough. Because they're putting tactical solutions on top of internal disorder. They're applying advanced systems to undisciplined foundations.
Yan, kunyari
You
may
can't
ginagawa.
systemize your way out of low self-worth. You can't automate your way out of avoidance. You can't scale your way out of sloppy execution. What you can do is elevate your standards so high that anything beneath excellence becomes unacceptable. Then, and only then, will the strategies you've been chasing finally start to work the way they were intended to. Keynote #4. Your transformation begins with honesty and discipline. Expanded to approx. 700 words. No ending sentences or headings. Transformation isn't something that just happens because you wish for it. It doesn't come from inspiration alone. And it certainly doesn't come just because you're tired of where you are. True transformation begins with two things most people avoid: honesty and discipline. You can't change what you pretend isn't broken. And you can't grow while you continue to lie to yourself about what needs to be addressed. Honesty is the foundation. Discipline is the structure. Without both, your transformation will always remain an idea instead of a reality. The first step in any real change is getting honest about where you actually are. Not where you tell people you are, not where you hope to be, where you actually are. That means taking off the mask. That means confronting the truth. That means looking at your life without filters and without excuses. You can't build a new life on top of denial. You have to admit what's not working. You have to call out the bad habits, the toxic mindsets, the cycles of procrastination and avoidance. Honesty isn't about shame. It's about clarity. You can't fix what you won't face. Being honest means owning your part. It means realizing that no matter who hurt you, no matter what didn't go your way, You still have a role to play in your own breakthrough. Because until you take ownership, you'll stay powerless. Victims don't transform, they stay stuck. Transformation requires you to move from blame to responsibility, from wishing to working, from excuses to execution. And that shift can't happen until you get brutally honest about what needs to change in your thinking, your choices, and your priorities. But honesty alone is not enough. Once you've faced the truth, you need discipline to do something about it. Discipline is the bridge between decision and result. It's the action you take every day that proves you're serious about changing. Discipline is not about motivation. It's not about being excited all the time. Discipline means showing up when you don't feel like it. It means following through on what you said you'd do long after the emotion you said it in has faded. Discipline builds consistency, and consistency builds transformation. Most people sabotage their own transformation because they only act when it's convenient. They work on themselves when life is calm, but they fall off when pressure shows up. The problem is, pressure is not the enemy, it's the test. It reveals how deep your discipline really goes. If your effort disappears every time life gets hard, you're not disciplined, you're situational. And you can't build a new life on situational effort. You need to be committed no matter what season you're in. Discipline is what turns principles into lifestyle. You can know all the right things to do, but until those actions become daily habits, nothing changes. Reading one book won't change your life. Going to the gym one time won't transform your body. Meditating once won't renew your mind. It's what you do consistently that creates momentum, and momentum is what fuels transformation. Discipline keeps you moving when motivation runs out. Discipline sustains the vision when the results are still invisible. And here's what you need to understand. Discipline is a form of self-respect. It's not punishment. It's not deprivation. It's a declaration. It says, I value myself enough to follow through. Every time you keep your word to yourself, you build trust. And the more you trust yourself, the more confident you become. That confidence fuels even greater levels of discipline, and it becomes a cycle of growth instead of a cycle of sabotage. But that cycle begins with the willingness to be honest and the commitment to be disciplined. Too many people want change without cost. They want results without refinement, but transformation is earned, it's built, it's forged in the day-to-day decisions that no one sees. It's developed in the quiet, unseen moments where you choose character over comfort, truth over ego, progress over perfection. The transformation you're looking for isn't in a dramatic event. It's in the small, honest conversations you have with yourself and the disciplined actions that follow. You don't need another chance. You need another level of honesty. You don't need a new plan. You need a deeper level of discipline. When those two things align, everything begins to shift. Keynote #5. Every setback was preparation, not punishment. Expanded to approx. 700 words, no ending sentences or headings. Setbacks have a way of making you question everything. They shake your confidence, they interrupt your plans, and they often leave you wondering if you're even on the right path. But here's the truth. Every setback you've experienced wasn't punishment. It was preparation. Life doesn't waste pain. It uses it. Every delay, every detour, every closed door was equipping you for something greater than you could see at the time. You weren't being denied. You were being developed. Most people interpret difficulty as disqualification. They think that because things went wrong, it must mean they're not good enough or they missed their moment. But real growth doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the shadows, the times when no one is clapping, the times when you feel overlooked, the seasons when you're grinding and nothing seems to be breaking. That's not failure, that's foundation. That's where strength is built. That's where character is formed. That's where you learn how to stand when everything in you wants to sit down. Preparation often looks like struggle. It looks like resistance because growth requires pressure. A muscle doesn't develop without tension. A diamond isn't created without being crushed, and your purpose won't emerge without process. That setback that felt like it was taking something from you was actually placing something asterisk in asterisk you. Grit, patience, clarity, wisdom, endurance, the things you didn't know you needed until you had no choice but to learn them. You see, what feels like rejection is often redirection. That opportunity that didn't come through wasn't the final door, it was just the wrong one. That relationship that ended wasn't a failure, it was a filter. It removed what couldn't go with you to the next level. That job that didn't work out wasn't the end, it was the beginning of you building something on your own terms. But if you're too focused on what you lost, you'll miss what it taught you. The power is in the perspective, and that's the shift. Learning to see setbacks differently. They're not signs that you're off track. They're part of the track. There is no elevation without resistance. There is no mastery without mistakes. If everything came easy, you wouldn't be prepared to handle it when it got real. Setbacks train your emotions. They mature your mindset. They sharpen your instincts. They force you to get serious about what you say you want. Because when everything is working, it's easy to talk about goals. But when it all falls apart, that's when you find out who you really are. Preparation is often disguised as pain. It's the season where you're being stretched beyond your comfort. It's the time when you're being tested beyond your limits, not to break you, but to build you, to teach you how to carry more, to show you what you're really made of, to strip away the distractions and teach you to focus. You don't learn how to lead in comfort. You don't build vision when everything's easy. You build it in the fire. You build it when you've been knocked down and have to choose to rise again. Every setback was making you stronger, even when it didn't feel like it. Even when you were crying, doubting, questioning. That situation was giving you something that no textbook, no seminar, no podcast could. It was giving you experience, lived wisdom, personal authority, the kind of insight that only comes from walking through it, not just talking about it. And that insight will be what sets you apart when the next opportunity comes. But you have to be willing to reframe the narrative. You have to stop seeing your past as a collection of failures and start seeing it as training. You weren't falling behind. You were being fortified. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. The pain wasn't random. It was strategic. It was preparation in disguise. And when you embrace that truth, you stop resenting what happened and start extracting the lesson. Because nothing is wasted. Not one tear. Not one loss. Not one delay. Most people get stuck in the memory of the setback and never step into the meaning of it. They relive the disappointment but never retrieve the wisdom. But if you can shift your focus from what happened asterisk to asterisk you and start looking at what it was doing asterisk for asterisk you, everything changes. You'll stop asking, why me? And start saying, what did this make me? Because that's where the power is, not in avoiding the setback, but in transforming through it. Asterisk asterisk Keynote #6. Isolation is where clarity is born. Asterisk asterisk expanded to approx. 700 words, no ending sentences, no headings in a world full of constant noise, endless scrolling, and everyone having something to say about everything. It's easy to lose the sound of your own voice. It's easy to lose touch with who you really are and what you're really supposed to be doing. That's why isolation isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's the answer, because isolation is where clarity is born. When you get quiet, you start to hear the truth. Not opinions, not trends, not pressure. Truth, and truth is what sets you free. But most people are afraid of isolation because they confuse
Yan,
it with
kunyari may ginagawa.
loneliness.
No, pukpok,
They
kunyari.
think that being
Pukpok
alone
ka,
means
video to.
being forgotten. But there's a difference between isolation for clarity and isolation from insecurity. Isolation for clarity is intentional. It's strategic. It's not about running away, it's about tuning in. It's about stepping back so you can see the full picture. You can't hear clearly when you're constantly surrounded by voices pulling you in different directions. You can't build anything strong when you're always reacting to the noise. At some point, you have to retreat, not to escape, but to align, to get honest, to confront the patterns, the habits, the distractions that you've been ignoring, because sometimes clarity requires disconnection. When you're isolated, you have no choice but to sit with yourself. No audience, no applause, no validation. Just you, your thoughts, and the reality of who you've become. And that moment can be uncomfortable, but it's also powerful. Because clarity doesn't come when life is loud. It comes when the noise fades and the truth rises. You start to remember what you were created to do. You start to recognize where you've been compromising. You start to see the gap between where you are and where you know you could be. And that awareness is the beginning of alignment. But most people run from that moment. They run back to busyness. They run back to distractions. Because being alone with your thoughts exposes things. It shows you what you've been avoiding. But exposure is a gift because you can't heal what you hide. You can't shift what you won't face, and clarity demands confrontation. Not with other people, with yourself. Isolation is not about pushing the world away. It's about pulling your purpose forward. It's about stepping into the stillness long enough to hear what really matters. Clarity gives you direction. It clears out the fog. It reminds you why you started. It helps you say no with conviction and yes with confidence. And that kind of clarity doesn't show up when you're constantly performing. It shows up when you pause, when you rest, when you get quiet enough to hear your own spirit speak. There are answers you'll never get in a crowd. There are breakthroughs that won't happen in public. Some visions are only born in silence. Some strategies only come after solitude. Isolation is also where strength is built. When you're by yourself, you learn to stop depending on the opinions of others to validate your next move. You stop looking for permission. You stop seeking approval. You begin to trust your own voice. You develop internal authority. And that's what you need when you re-enter the world. Because if you don't learn how to lead yourself in isolation, the world will always lead you in distraction. Clarity without strength will still lead to compromise. That's why isolation builds both. There's a version of you that you haven't met yet. A version with deeper wisdom, sharper focus, stronger discipline. But that version doesn't show up in noise. It shows up in silence. It shows up when you stop performing and start listening. When you stop proving and start becoming. That version is waiting for you in the quiet.
Yan,
Not
kunyari
the
may ginagawa.
silence
No,
of
pukpok,
emptiness,
kunyari.
but the silence of
Pukpok ka, video
intentional
to.
reflection, the silence of personal accountability, the silence where revelation happens. Most people think breakthrough happens on stages, but it usually starts in secret, in the quiet place where you decide you're no longer okay with the gap between your calling and your current state, where you stop blaming your environment and start taking responsibility for your elevation, where you no longer need someone else to tell you you're valuable because you've heard it in the stillness for yourself. That's the kind of clarity that changes everything, and you only find it when you're willing to isolate, not to disconnect from the world, but to reconnect with your purpose. So now the truth stands in front of you, clear, raw, and undeniable. You don't need more time, more advice, or another excuse. You need a decision to find yourself again, to stop living on autopilot, to stop being available to every distraction and start being loyal to your destiny. You've been delayed, maybe even discouraged, but you are not done. This is the season to rise, not by hype, but by honesty. Not by luck, but by discipline. The life you've been waiting for is waiting on **. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to hand you clarity, consistency, or confidence. That's your responsibility. And the moment you take it back is the moment everything changes. Stop chasing what you already carry. Wake up to who you are. Rebuild, reset, recommit. Because your comeback doesn't start when the world believes in you. It starts when **you** do.